Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Hawk Deadlock OTF. This is actually a 2019 Model B. The Model A being the original. This actually is an evolution, as far as I can tell, of the Model A. And now we actually have the Model C, the newest one. I figured it was important for me to not handle this for myself and kind of understand it, because at some point I'd like to handle the Model C, be able to compare and contrast, but also just for anybody who wants some information on this. Thank you so much to Amateur Knives on Instagram for letting me take a look at this guy. It's because of him, or people like him, that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. And also thanks to my generous patrons for supporting me. There's a link for Patreon down below. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. This is a custom knife, a very expensive custom knife. Normally I don't do reviews on custom knives, but I feel fairly confident talking about this one. I will link these right down below. Why? Because periodically these actually do pop up. I know those of you who kind of scroll through the retailers, right? You've probably seen these actually pop up. So there's a chance that one's available out there. I'll link through various retailers so you can check if you'd like to. Size comparisons. Actually, no. Let's measure it. Overall length of this OTF coming in at about, it's actually a little shorter than I thought. It's like 8.25 inches overall. Blade length, I'm going to say that's about 3.6. Your cutting edge is about 3.25. These handle scales dip in here. So this is a good, full-size OTF. Size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. You can see here it's closer to the size of the Rat 1. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Benchmade Bug Out. There you go. And last, for the regular size comparisons, up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. So there you go. How about some OTFs, right? This is an OTF, or out the front automatic knife. How about up against the Microtech Combat Troodon? There's a big guy right there. How about up against the Microtech Ultratech? So the Ultratech and the Deadlock are very similar in size if you actually just go to the handle and not the glass breaker on the back. But the Deadlock definitely has a little bit more presence. How about up against the Microtech Scarab? There you go. Definitely smaller than some of Microtech's big boys. And then the other OTF I've got here is the Guardian Tactical Recon 40, which is definitely the largest OTF that I've got. So this is not a small OTF, but it's also not an XL OTF. It's kind of an in-between sized OTF. So what's the deal with this? Why do they call it the Deadlock? I'm sure that a lot of you know by now why they call this a Deadlock. But to give you an example, on almost all OTFs in existence, there is at least a little bit of wiggle. That is normal. Right? There's always going to be people telling you that it's their Benchmade Infidel doesn't have any blade play, or their Microtech Combat Troodon doesn't have any blade play. What they mean is it has very, very, very little blade play. All OTFs that I have ever handled, especially the Infidel. We have a local dealer. I have handled 10 different Infidels in my life. They all have blade play. None of them are solid, right? They all have a little bit. Generally, that's been the case to make sure that the blade can actually deploy, so that friction on the way out is not slowing it down, right? So they do lock out. They're not going to disengage, right, as X-Ring has proven with a lot of Microtech knives. Once they're locked out, they're locked out. But they've always got a little tiny bit of movement. The Deadlock, the mechanism inside here, does not allow it to move, and I mean that. There was a part of me that was real skeptical about this OTF. I'm like, does it really not move? Or are some of these people making videos, right? These are the people who bought them, so they're just afraid to admit that the knife that they spent $1,500 to $1,800 on actually does have a little bit of blade play, when that is the very reason they bought it, probably. I mean, partially. Obviously, this is a very, very nice knife made out of premium materials, right? Custom knife. But one of the main elements being it's not supposed to wiggle. If it wiggles a little bit, are they going to tell us? Well, this isn't mine. I don't get to keep this. This was lent to me, right? So there's no sentimental value here for me. This truly locks out solid. I'm very happy to confirm that. I cannot wrench on that blade. I'm being careful because it's sharp on both sides. I cannot wrench on that blade in any direction and get it to fail. This also shows evidence of being well loved and used by amateur knives. So it's not like, oh, it locks out solid when you get it and then it kind of loosens up over time. No, it's truly solid. How does the mechanism work? Apparently, Gavin Hawk has a video on this where he has taken this thing apart and shown exactly how everything comes together and locks into place and keeps it all together. So I would urge you to check that out because me just talking about it is not going to do you nearly as much good. Let's go ahead and do carry profile up against the Spyderco Para 3. Wow, it's a thick boy. It definitely. This is a thick OTF. How about some thickness up against one of the thickest OTFs that I own? Yeah, it's literally as thick as the Scarab. A little bit thicker than the Combat Troodon, and definitely a little bit thicker than the Ultratech. Let's do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3 and PM2. It's fairly tall, but it's still not quite as tall as the hump in the PM2 and Para 3. About the same body length as a PM2, definitely longer than a Para 3. The main thing here is that it's heavy. It is very, very rare that we see an OTF where the body is titanium. I don't know why. Probably just because, I mean, like, if you're gonna see that, you know, it would likely be. I still don't. We don't see it often, even with like Microtech, right? But they'll use stainless steel on their customs for some reason. I would imagine maybe it's just really expensive to. I don't know, right? But they're doing it here. I really would like to see more titanium OTFs. I think it's cool. It does throw the balance off, especially on this knife, because this knife is super body heavy. If you want to know where the balance is on this thing, it's back here. So that's probably the case. I mean, the aluminum is definitely going to be lighter, right? So anyways, the knife is probably going to weigh somewhere around 6.5 ounces. That would be my guess. It really does feel heavy. Okay, yeah, almost exactly. That almost never happens. 6.46 ounces. So depending on the inlet, sometimes you can get these with like carbon fiber. Like I know they make some of these with a carbon fiber front. The Model C, what I've seen, I have no idea what the outer material is or the frame material. Obviously the chassis on the inside is going to be steel. But I've definitely seen what looks like carbon fiber on some of the Model Cs. I've definitely seen these with carbon fiber fronts, actually, and I think carbon fiber backs. So this is the heaviest version of this. But there are, to my understanding, lighter versions. So it just depends on what it is you're after. Me, I don't really care. I love titanium. If I can get it in full titanium, that's what I'm going to go for. I could care less about the balance and all of that. Blade stock thickness on this guy. It's definitely not a super thick blade. Let's go ahead and measure it. We got to get it right on the back here. That's why I put tape on these. 100 and, oh, wow. Is it really? Really? That seems thick. 150 thousandths. Maybe it is. No, this is there's no way. That's got to be off. It just doesn't make any sense. It's throwing it all over the place. Okay, it's saying 152 thousandths. Maybe it is. Is it really? Is the Tang? So there's the PM2 at 145 thousandths. Okay, maybe it really is 150 thousandths. It looks like it's 140 at the most, but okay. Calipers aren't necessarily the most accurate thing in the world. But anyways, so yeah, let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. Get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very recommendable and very inexpensive. You can find them down in the description. I believe all of these screws are T8, which is pretty cool. Now, I'm not going to recommend, if you do get your hands on these are all T8. If you do get your hands on one of these, I'm not going to recommend that you try to take it apart. If it needs to be taken apart, I would recommend contacting the Hawks and having them do that for you. But if you really need to get in there, because it's yours and you pay the money for it, they're T8. So that's pretty cool. I've taken apart OTFs like the Scarab, the Lightning, knives like that. Those are pretty simple. This is a little bit different. I'd be a little bit more intimidated by it, so do that at your own risk. Okay, this is a dual action automatic out the front knife. So this is definitely going to be illegal in a lot of places for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's an automatic knife. Number two, it's got a pretty long blade. And number three, this is a dagger ground blade. It's truly sharp on both sides. Okay, so if you're gonna pick one of these up, make sure you know what your local laws are. This is definitely something that can get you in trouble. Fortunately, in Kansas, we can carry this stuff, right? I know a lot of people want to know about the action. I have never felt action exactly like this. I always praise the Guardian Tactical OTFs for having unbelievably smooth actuation of the switch, and that's because of the ball bearings running underneath the switch and on the steel plate. The throw feels very powerful, and actuation of the switch is very, very smooth. Microtech knives have a lot more tension, a lot more grittiness on the switch itself, but also tend to be, especially knives like the Combat Troodon and Scarab, tend to be really powerful. This thing also has smooth actuation of the switch. I dare say it's at least equal to the Guardian Tactical. I don't know exactly what's going on underneath here, but like I said, that video that Gavin Hawk did apparently explains all of this. It looks like there's some type of little pillar separating the scale and the button. So the button itself is not actually riding directly on top of the titanium. It's unbelievably smooth approaching that event horizon where it throws the blade. Now, the blade throw itself does not actually feel that powerful. It feels... I don't want to say weak or sluggish, because here's the thing. The body on this is heavy and titanium. So there's not it's a smaller blade coming out of the front as well. So there's not a lot of feeling of recoil. On this guy, we have a much larger blade and we have a much lighter body. But you can also kind of hear, maybe it's just resonance on the inside of it. It also sounds a lot more powerful. This guy doesn't seem to fire very hard, but then again, watching the blade come out, it doesn't necessarily look like it's any slower. Not really. I don't know why it just doesn't feel quite as powerful, but it has not failed. This blade has not failed once. I have done this hundreds of times since this knife has been in my possession. So I think it would feel a little more satisfying if that thing rocketed out of there, you know, really, really fast, but it doesn't. And I've heard that before. This knife has been a grail for me for a long time. I love the look of it. I'm a big fan of Symmetry. A lot of people are going to look at this and go, I don't want it. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? This to me is a beautiful OTF. I love the symmetry of it. I love the look of it. I love the big chunky titanium parts. And I like the fact that I can get it in full titanium. Another thing that I like about this knife is where the blade actually comes out. It's in the dead middle of the knife. A lot of OTFs have them deploy off to one side, and I imagine it's just to make room for the mechanisms on the inside. It always bothered my brain just a little bit, right? All of these, they all deploy off to one side. The Deadlock deploys out the middle. So it, other than the placement of like the switch and this area back here, right in the pocket clip, it is truly symmetrical knife. I also like that on retraction. There's a little bit of reverberation there and it sounds really cool. Now, it might be intentional or it might be because whatever sound deadening goop they put on those springs has just worn away over time. I'm somebody who likes a little bit of twang in the OTF, as long as it doesn't sound cheap, right? Some, like the Lightning OTF twang sounds a little cheap. Can you hear that? Just a little bit of ding. I kind of like that. I think it's neat. But yeah, there's a lot of satisfaction there with the aesthetics. I also very much like the switch. That switch it's so natural and organic. It's such an easy switch to approach. I think I would not hand this to my kids, but I probably could, and they could probably deploy it. My wife has no problem with it. Even somebody like my mom, who's got weaker hands, is not going to have a problem with this. This is if you've ever, gotten a brand new Ultratech and thought, oh my gosh, it's so hard to put, That is not the case with this. This is very, very easy to actuate, and it's very comfortable. These are almost sort of scalloped out here, and then they're stepped. So your finger's going to grab this. It's absolutely going to grab this, but it's comfortable. It's nice and wide, right? And then on the way back down, it's not quite the same type of... The most uncomfortable OTF that I own to deploy is definitely the Combat Troodon because of this narrow and tall step right here. It's just a little bit aggressive. This, I could deploy that thing 1,000 times. My thumb, the muscles in my thumb will get tired before the skin becomes irritated. This area back here, where it's got the Hawk logo, I love how it looks. Is it for traction, holding it like this? Is it for a little bit of traction here? I don't know. There's a couple of different little traction points they've got. It's like an additional titanium inlay. It looks really cool. A lot of people might prefer that everything is the same color. Yes, they do apparently make versions of this where all of these parts are not heat anodized. But I believe all of this, yeah, it's all titanium. Some of the internals, right, the magnets want to pull a little bit because some of the internals are steel. But this is all titanium. So you've got the heat anodized areas right here, the sort of orange and purple, the pocket clip, these little inlays. It's great. Ergonomically, unbelievably comfortable. You've got a lot filling out the hand here, but all of the edges are nicely chamfered down. Very, very comfortable. If I was actually going to take this out and use this, yeah, no problem. It really does feel unbelievably comfortable. The pocket clip, that's super cool. We're going to talk about that. The blade, very simple, very similar to the Benchmade Infidel blade, except that it doesn't have the the decorations at the bottom. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. The grind is truly perfect. It really does go straight out to the tip, which is something that really bothers me on other OTFs where they just can't quite get it to go straight, right? The edges look nice. We're not looking at a blade that is unbelievably thin down at the edge, and that's because, you know, that's all the more room it has to drop is off the center of the blade. But you get double the edge retention of whatever steel is on the knife because you have two edges. What's the steel? Looking back, it's either 20 CV or 204P. I've seen that those two steels are the ones that they have used the most on the Model B, if not exclusively. Those are analogs to M390. I think that's a great choice. I don't have a problem with that. I love how this area right here on the, it goes all the way around. It just sticks out a little bit further than the rest of the frame, and that's done intentionally. It's just a nice look. I think it looks a lot better than if they would have left it totally flush with the scales. It's nice. It's present on the knife no matter, if you get different colors or finishes, right, or if you just get this full monochromatic look, it's present there. But it allows them to, I guess, sort of make it an accent, make it a more powerful contrast with the rest of the knife. Really nice. I also like the tumbling that's going on the titanium here. Normally, I would want that tumbling to extend to the blade. This looks like... it's like a bead blast on the blade. And I think that contrast looks really nice. Had they just gone ahead and applied the same finish to the blade as the frame, I think it would have looked a little less... I don't know, it wouldn't have looked as good. I like the contrast of the bead blast to the titanium on this, and it's because, the look of the blade, right? A lot of people are going to look at this and say that blade looks too skinny for the handle. That, again, is just kind of, depends on how you feel about that. I don't, that's not what I thought the first time that I saw it, and I still don't think that now. I don't know that they could have made the blade wider. If you look, here, and you have to consider there needs to be room for all the internals and everything on the left and right side of the blade and top to bottom. It's just going to be the case, right? And perhaps that's why, some of the Microtech knives have wider blades, or any of these OTFs have wider blades, but then they have more room for whatever internal mechanisms they need on one side or the other, right? So I don't know. It's just the way that it is. This is all beautiful. All of this looks great. Oh no, there's no lanyard hole. There's a little thing right, well, that's really just access to the screw back here. But, oh yeah, darn, there's no lanyard hole. This pocket clip is awesome. So you push down on one side, lifts it up on this side. I love that. And experimenting with it, just, pinching right here and getting it in and out of the pocket, it works beautifully. It works exactly the way that you'd want it to. This is excellent. Now, because of where it stops, there's quite a bit of knife sticking up out of your pocket. It would have been nice if it was just a little bit deeper, but I can understand there where they needed that, little pivot for it to go up and down. I can kind of understand, but gosh, it functions really well. I just wish that it carried a little bit deeper, but maybe it's different in the Model C, right? I might be complaining about something in the B that has been corrected in the Model C. Yeah, no hotspot on the clip either because it's flat and these corners are really not all that sharp. They're pretty rounded off, which is nice. Back of the knife looks great. This is the type of knife, because of the shape of it, right? Lefties, you can simply flip it over and just put it. You're going to be interacting with this knife the exact same way that a right-handed person would. It's just, you just flip it over. So it's not one of, I used to get confused about that in reviews because of the symmetry of this and the nature of it. It does not need the pocket clip to be flipped to the other side. If you could imagine right-handed person going into a right-handed pocket, deploying it with their thumb this way, right? Flip the knife over. Left-handed person, you're going to be using this side of the pocket clip, or this side of the knife, the pocket clip, to interact with your pocket. You're also going to be using the correct, you're going to be holding the knife the same way as compared to a right-handed person and using your thumb the exact same way to deploy it, right? It's the same thing. Very cool. Cons to this, the titanium one is heavy. OTFs are illegal for a number of reasons, right? Blade geometry is not going to allow for the most performance-oriented cutting in your day-to-day, in your simple day-to-day life, right? If you're going to use this for specialty stuff, tactical stuff, okay. You know more than me about your day-to-day and what it needs, so there you go. Firing power leaves something to be desired, but then it makes me question exactly how much do I need firing power if the thing is reliably locking out. Downside to OTFs is that they can collect dirt and debris. Whether or not dirt and debris would actually slow this thing down to the point where it wouldn't deploy, I'm sure there is a certain amount. Like if you dumped sand in here, yeah, it probably would slow it down. So that's just something that, you have to consider. What I'm saying is that the seeming lack of firepower, is that something that is going to affect it more than something like the Combat Troodon over time? Is it more likely to fail? There are nowhere near as many deadlocks in circulation as there are Microtech OTFs, so you will inevitably hear about more failures from Microtech OTFs or other popular OTF models. You'll hear more about failures from them than you will this guy because there are less people who have this. That being said, I don't think I've ever heard of a single situation of a deadlock not firing. And people are going to be quick to say, that's because people don't use them. No, that's just what you think. That's people who say that. It just means from your perspective as somebody who, does either has expensive knives and doesn't use them or has never purchased a really expensive knife. That's just what you think about other people. But that's the thing. You don't know anything about those other people who buy them and use them. I have met hundreds of people who purchase knives that are the same price as this, twice as much, 3 times as much, and carry them and use them on a regular basis. It might sound hard to believe, but it's absolutely true. So, I would think that I would have stumbled across at least one instance, one example of somebody's deadlock not firing out. I'm sure that it has happened. It seems really reliable. It doesn't feel like there's anything slowing it down. That's the thing. The power behind the throw feels a little bit lacking, but as far as the blade actually deploying, it feels very smooth. It doesn't feel like it's getting caught up with friction or anything like that. There's a couple of little rub marks down here, which tells me that it is touching the frame a little bit. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But, so far it seems really, really reliable. So, like I said, these do periodically drop at retailers. I don't know what the actual base retail price of this is. Probably $1,500. I have definitely seen them listed for more, but usually between $1,500 and $1,800. This is a custom knife. It is not made the same way as your titanium Wii knife with CPM 20CV that costs $200. No, it is not the same thing. It doesn't matter that it's made out of the same materials. It is not made the same way. This is vastly more complicated in that, number one, it is an OTF. Number two, it's made in the United States. And number three, there was way more time that went into this than a production knife, right? Is it going to be worth $1,500 to the average person? Absolutely not. But they're also not mass produced. They're not trying to appeal to every single person. They're trying to appeal to small groups of people who are interested in OTFs that are custom made. In this case, I guess that are titanium, and also in this case that lock out completely and totally solid. They're doing something that nobody else has ever done. Yes, you Benchmade infidel fans who are just claiming, you know, firmly that your Benchmade infidel has no blade play. I don't believe you, and neither does anybody else. This knife is the only OTF that I have ever handled that has truly zero, and I mean nothing, not even the tiniest little teeny tiny movement in the blade. Nothing. It is completely and totally solid. This is cool. I can't recommend this knife to everybody. I can't say, yeah, this is definitely go out. No, it's really, really expensive. It's just not going to be, nobody needs to spend this much on a knife, right? Nobody. If you are specifically looking for a custom OTF that is made incredibly well with premium materials and locks out completely and totally solid, this is the one. Buy it. You should definitely buy it, and you won't be happy until you have it. For literally everybody else, you'll be fine spending substantially less money on a, a Microtech, right? I mean, like, go with an Ultratech. These are a bit high at $290, but it'll scratch that itch, and it's essentially going to do the same thing. Now, for me, though, this is still a grail. It is still something that I hope to acquire one day. But I just want to make sure and make that, make that clear. Just because I want to buy it and I think it's amazing, and I think that, other people who like specifically this would think it's amazing, does not mean that I am recommending this to everybody. No, obviously not. It's a specific, like a specialized thing, right? It's only going to be appealing to certain people who really want to go after this, right? And I'm not saying just people who want to spend a lot of money. You could give $1,500 to any individual person, and they would spend it on all relatively different stuff, right? So that's my conclusion here. I love this. I wish it fired a little bit harder, but I can't really fault it for that because it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Other than the firing power, this is really everything that I thought it would be. So, yeah, I like it. This is awesome. I don't know that there's really a whole lot more that I can say. Thanks again to Amateur Knives for letting me finally take a look at this thing. I'm really glad that I got an opportunity to handle it. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.